SJ. Welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. SJ, Stone Go, Gary Five, Jaho Jeff Giddos, Mvskoke Radio, Mabo Hadjitawedskis. Welcome to our program here on a not made up its mind weather Okmulgee day. We've got a couple things we'll be sharing with you, some informational discussions that we think will be really useful. First of all, we'll have Pyler Stone with the behavioral health folks coming in to talk about their new facility and answer a few questions about what they've got. In our second segment, we're going to be talking to the Rock the Vote people. Lillian Thomas should be joining us, and we'll talk about their campaign to get more Mvskoke people out to take part in upcoming elections. So first of all, let's get on with it. Good morning, Pyler. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We have a couple things we'll be sharing. As I say,
Yeah, so we're actually not fully moved into that building quite yet. So we've been operational. We're over at the hospital still currently, more specifically the Pine building and the Baker building. So we're actually split apart between our grants and programs and our outpatient therapy. So what's really cool about having this new building is we'll be under one roof, right? It's a brand new facility. This also allows us to expand services more because with this new facility, we have more space, which means more therapists, which means more help for more citizens, which is what our mission is to help promote healthy lifestyles and quality care when we're wanting to enhance the lives of Native Americans, their families, and the communities, right?
Well, that sounds like it's kind of part of your mission there. Mm-hmm. Well, let's just start right there. What is behavioral health set up to do?
Yeah, so behavioral health is what we're set up to do is to provide outpatient therapy. So if anyone is struggling with anger issues, stress, depression, anxiety, a lot of things that we saw exacerbated due to the pandemic, right? That's what we're there to do, is to have therapy, one-on-one counseling, or even couples or families counseling, where people come in, they set up an appointment, and you're connected with a therapist that you talk to once every 2 weeks, once every month, really just kind of depending on your need. And really what we're there to do is to help provide our clients with the tools that they need to help improve their lives. Right?
When we kind of look at the overall situation, in my career, I've seen a lot of problems facing Native America that come into this particular area. Mm-hmm. Behavior, how do you modify it if you need to, or mm-hmm. support someone? And I'm probably going to ask you to speculate here just a touch, but how big of an issue do we have here with the Mvskoke people? I mean, is it a huge problem? I mean, it's got to affect us, but do you all have a handle on it in some sort?
Yeah. So after 2020, it was hard for everyone, right? It was hard for you and me, right? It was hard for me working in the field because I had this fear, I had this anxiety of this virus. But when that took place, we immediately brainstormed and thought, well, what can we do? So we wanted to make sure that we were cross-training more staff that maybe not training staff to be therapists, so to speak, but to offer support and help for other employees who may be stressed out too, or scared or anxious about COVID. So we trained a lot of our staff to kind of be on site and do phone calls or Zoom calls with people, staff members who may be struggling. who may need some assistance there and kind of talking it out. We created weekly coffee breaks, so to speak, Zoom coffee breaks, where it was about 30 minutes where staff members could come together and just kind of talk about different topics that we had at hand. And it was really just a time for people to say, for a lot of people, they said, this is the only time I really get to talk to other adults that are kind of going through this because I'm at home, working at home. So I'm with my kids all day. So this is a time for me to actually talk to adults. And we also just kind of opened up our doors more, and we were able to do more telehealth as well. So more phone calls, Zoom calls. We were able to reach more people that maybe transportation was an issue. To answer your question, we did see an increase in stress, depression, and thoughts of suicide during the pandemic. We were very busy at that time. We worked closely with our emergency room and trained them more as well, and kind of what to do in these situations, right? Where we still see depression, anxiety, thoughts of suicide come through our doors. But we are we're not seeing the issue of because for a while there it was really tough because a lot of the hospitals were having COVID outbreaks too. So there was the issue of, okay, well, if people need inpatient care, where do they go? So that got kind of tough for a while. We're not seeing that as much these days, which is great. So people who are in crisis get the help that they need. So that's just a few of the things that we did there in trying to combat it. So we also went out to communities, passed out resource bags, which contained obviously resources, but also family games as well, because we really wanted to increase family time, right? For a lot of people, they had to sort of learn who their spouses were again, right? Learn more about their kids, because everyone kind of goes off and does their own thing, and then they may come back for a couple hours at night, but you're having to spend all day with them. What does that family time look like? What does healthy family time look like? How does, what are some things that I can do to make sure that I'm spending quality time with my family, being present with them, right?
We've heard that comment before, and people were kind of pointing out that since there are people who had to quarantine or just common sense, staying home and not mixing in the public and
sure.
being there with you folks. But the thought was that that's kind of hard on people too, having to be around each other all day.
Yeah.
Saying, "No, I didn't know you were such a gripey guy."
Yeah.
Just shut up and leave me alone. Did you run across that sort of thing? Did it pop up?
Personally, no. I did hear I did hear that there was an increase in abuse cases, unfortunately.
Ew.
Yeah, over the course of the pandemic, between domestic violence and then child abuse as well, unfortunately. I don't have any statistics. That was just kind of what I've heard through the years.
I understand. And by the way, let me throw this in. Thank you for being drafted to come in today.
Yeah, for sure.
I appreciate it. Yeah, one of the things I was kind of turning over in my own mind is the stress and depression of having to put this show on every week, and maybe guests couldn't make it or decided not to. And I go, oh my God!
I know.
I got an hour of airtime I got to fill, and I'm just sort of being.
No, I always appreciate the opportunity.
Joking? No. I meant that I was joking about me. It's like.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But it was these kinds of things that we were hoping to share today, and in the mission now with this new facility and new capabilities. Do you have any projects or any specific focus that you'll be taking?
Yeah, a couple of things that we like about, as I said, the more therapists is really good, and also too, we know that therapy is still very stigmatized, and there's a lot of people who don't really feel comfortable reaching out for mental health, right?
Mm.
And that's still a hurdle that we have to get over. And we're getting better at it, but that stigma is still there associated with reaching out and talking about the fact that, okay, I am depressed or I am stressed out or I am having anger issues or I am having problems at home with my family. And I need to kind of figure out what are some things I can do to alleviate this, right? So one of the things we like about where the new location is at is there's a little bit more of anonymity to it. It's a little bit kind of off, I wouldn't say off the beaten path. You can see it from the road, but it's not so connected to other building, because one of the things that I think people run into is, oh, well, I'm afraid to go and go to therapy because my therapy office is in the same building where people go and see medical attention. And seeking medical attention isn't stigmatized, right, as mental health. So a little further away, a little more disconnected, which I think kind of helps with that anonymity there. But the other thing one of our other goals is we're actually exploring an outdoor play therapy. We have a little bit more space out there to do something like that. So really looking at, because there's not a ton of room inside for play therapy. I mean, you could do it in one of the clinician's room, but there's um, a lot of research out there that kind of supports play therapy and this idea that, for some kids it may be kind of hard to sit down and stand still and talk about what's going on, but getting them kind of moving, putting something in their hands, right? Because everyone's different learners. Putting something in their hands can kind of help open things up, get them to talk about things, right? Get them to understand things. So we're really excited about the potential of an outdoor play therapy area, which is just another way that we can support our clients, because when it comes to therapy, honestly, there isn't a one shoe fits all approach, right? Everyone's different. And the way we kind of navigate through that journey with our clients is going to look different too.
Now, let's take a second to we've talked about it, a new space and everything, but let's make sure people know where it is and new capabilities. So where are you located with this new facility?
Absolutely. So I'm blanking on the actual highway itself, because growing up here in Okmulgee, I've always called it New Morris Highway. I think that's 266, I think it is, that runs from Wood Drive, and it heads east and west. So if you're familiar with where Quail Meadows is at, the housing addition there, right before you get to the loop entryway, it's on the south side of the road there on 266.
Okay, to make things a lot easier for someone like me, go to Mazzio's and hang a turn to the east.
Yep, head to the east. Yep, head to the east, and you'll go. It's about 2.5, 3 miles there. It's where the old, I think it was called Sewell's or Sewell's place used to be. But yeah, it's right before it turns into a 1-lane or 2-lane road there.
And many of the techniques and therapies, if you will, in Native American tradition have, been based in culture, sometimes language or other tribal practice.
Yeah.
Is any of that incorporated in what you do? Do you offer something like that? How does it mix in?
Yeah, for sure. So for our clinicians, when they're doing that ongoing therapy, what they want to, what's really important to know is looking at those protective factors, right? Asking the client, do you go to, do you go to ceremonial stomp dances? Because not all of our clients do, right? Have you, if going to that, we may have a client that says, yeah, I used to, but I kind of fell out, and then maybe they fell out because of their depression or anxiety. And then we may work with that client and say, what are your thoughts about going back into that and seeing if that sort of helps combat some of the depression, anxiety that you have going on? Do you have a mentor or an elder that you can talk to? We know that a lot of us seek guidance and help and support from our tribal elders, right? So because sometimes people may have had things in their life that worked for them when they were struggling, or that helped them out, but somewhere along the way we kind of get away from those, and that's one of the results of depression is we kind of lose interest in things that we used to like doing, that used to actually work for us, And sometimes we just need a little bit of help, kind of getting back to that place. I know for me personally, whenever I go out and work, um, I've teamed up a lot with Mvskoke Nation Youth Services, so we've been doing monthly cultural events or activities. So, for example, we took a few young men out and did some stickball making classes. Um, we have also done moccasin making, bead making, finger weaving, beading, things like that. And we're also going to be doing some more summer projects coming up next week, actually. So about each week, we'll be doing a different cultural activity.
Do you find these to be effective? Is it measurable by any chance, or is it just the smile on somebody's face?
Sure. So I like to ask, I do kind of like a little poll every time, and I like to ask all the youth who participate, did you find this helpful? And about 95% of the time they say, yeah, it was helpful for me. This is a protective factor. I'll ask, what are some of the feelings and emotions you had when you were participating in this activity? And about 95% of the time, they're usually, quote, positive feelings. So it's happy, joyful, inspired, right? Not to say that it's bad if you felt anger or sadness. Those are very normal and acceptable feelings. But we do see that a lot of our youth that participate in these activities feel a sense of happiness and joy, right? Because when you think about it, when you're working on something like a moccasin or beading, right? Beading, you have little needle and beads, right? It's really hard to focus on anything else when you're beading or doing something right in front of you, right? You have to be very careful and methodical. So that's one of the cool things is, one, you're not thinking about some of the outside stuff that may be sort of weighing you down or impacting your mental health, right, in a negative way. And then two, there's a sense of connecting with culture, right, in that. And one of the things we preach all the time is culture is a protective factor. It brings us this sense of protection and helping us kind of navigate through life when it gets really tough for us.
Do you have any feel or guesstimate, if you will, about the service population? Do you kind of got an idea of how many people come through or come seeking assistance?
Yeah, I don't have those numbers off the top of my head right now, unfortunately.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
guesstimation?
yeah,
Gosh, if I had to guess from all of our 5 locations, I would guess maybe per week 200 to 300, maybe.
wow,
Maybe.
that's great. Yeah,
I could be way off, but
well,
that's my guess. Yeah.
it sounds good to me, and we'll leave it right there. Now, you mentioned 5 locations. Let's take a second here and let people know where they can gain assistance.
Sure. No, absolutely. So we have a location in Sapulpa, Coweta, Okmulgee, Okemah, and Eufaula. Those are our 5 locations there.
Now, are these walk-in clinics, or do you have to make an appointment?
Yeah, so you have to make an appointment. It does kind of, if it's a crisis, so if somebody is in an immediate crisis, whether they may be harmful to self or other people, we always advise go to the nearest hospital and get assessed and get safe there. But if you're wanting some therapy, just to kind of work through some things, you can actually give us a call at one of those numbers. And I'll give you a number. I'll give you the Okmulgee number if you're listening now. And if you call that number, and let's say you live in Coweta or Sapulpa or anywhere near those cities that may work better for you, we can always just transfer you to one of those numbers and set up an appointment that way. Yeah. So the number to call, our main number is 918-758-1910. You can just call and say, hey, I'm interested in some therapy, and then we'll get you connected with the right person. Typically what happens over the phone is somebody will call, and we have a piece of paper that we fill out with just some basic information, presenting problems, what's kind of going on. And then from there, we look at the schedule, set you up your first appointment, which is always kind of a longer one because we call that an intake. And that's really an opportunity for the therapist to get to know the client and think, okay, what's going on? Let's look at sort of life history. What are your goals? What are some things? What do you want to get out of therapy, right? And then from there, then the therapy starts and the work happens there.
You mentioned when you get a call, and I guess this next question takes the stress level even further. Are you equipped? Do you have people who could handle someone who is in a suicidal mode? I mean, they're sitting there with a whatever weapon or whatever.
Yeah.
People who can pick up a discussion like that and either refer them or just talk to them directly.
Yeah, we do. I'm actually one of those people myself. So every case is different. A lot of times we try to get the person to come into our office so we can kind of see them one-on-one in person and talk to them that way. Sometimes we get calls from people that say, hey, so-and-so is suicidal. Can you call them and talk to them? So we'll do that. And then we'll figure out what is the necessary treatment for that person. Because a lot of times people think if you're having a thought of wanting to die or go to sleep and not wake up, that you automatically have to go to the hospital, and that's just not the case. So what my role, anytime somebody comes to the door and is presenting thoughts of suicide, it's my job, one of my many jobs that I have, but what's my role is to assess them and see where they're at and then staff it with my supervisors and decide what's best treatment for this person for maintaining their safety. And I've done this close to 100 times, and so I'm still kind of learning too, but every single case is different.
Well, while we're on this particular subject, let me take it another step.
Sure.
Now, when you've had one of these calls, and of course protect the confidentiality, if you will,
Yeah.
and someone's talking about doing it now, what's your reaction, and how would you guide someone like that?
Sure. So let's say if somebody were to call and they were actively suicidal and they were in immediate harm for themselves, I would have to contact law enforcement, right, to do a wellness check if there was that immediate risk right then and there. Stay on the phone with them until Light Horse shows up and just kind of work through them, let them know, help is on the way, or get you some help that you need, right? Now, I know sometimes people may say, well, if that person's already made their mind up, then there's nothing we can do about it. And I just can't believe that. I can't. Because there's a reason that person reached out, right? So I always have to maintain a belief that a lot of times when people are in a suicidal crisis, if they get the help that they need, that can be a great outcome, So in that kind of situation, that's what we would do. If there's that immediate risk right there. In there, I would be trying to gather information about where do they live, do they have a firearm with them, where's it at, where are they located in the house, right? And then meanwhile, I may have somebody over here that is relaying that information to law enforcement, so it's kind of a team effort right there, right, just to maintain their safety. And that's right there what we're doing is swift crisis intervention. We're trying to intervene in the crisis situation before an unfortunate outcome happens.
I am assuming that you've had that experience.
Um, I Yes, but I was the person kind of on the outside looking at. So I actually saw this a similar experience of this happening,
Sure.
but I wasn't directly involved. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
It's, a situation where I find myself confused and still and
mhm.
confounded. And a thought comes to mind that before Robin Williams committed suicide, there was a statement attributed to him saying that suicide was a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Mhm.
Now, is that kind of a philosophy that you work with? Do you share that?
Um, yeah, I mean, I tend to have I tend to don't use like that phrase necessarily
Yeah, I can
in my
understand.
work um, because it seems it comes from a place that is sort of like punishing almost in a way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's almost it kind of reinforces like a sense of guilt, right? Like you don't want to
Mm-hmm.
do that because it's a temporary, you know, it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. You know, in that moment, that problem for that individual doesn't feel temporary; it feels forever.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so what we're really trying to do is work with that person to find ways to manage and handle the suicidality, right? And to answer your and to validate those feelings of it being scary to ask that question or to bring it up, it is 100%.
Gosh.
That is very normal. I understand completely how normal it is um, to feel scared asking that question or to be
Mm-hmm.
presented with somebody in your life who's feeling that way.
Now, we're going to have to wrap this up
Sure.
pretty quick, but I think I just have to ask is, what's the effect on you? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're dealing with the rawest of human emotions here,
Mm-hmm.
and it's, it's demanding so much from you. I mean,
Sure.
is there a price you pay that?
Yeah, you definitely. I mean, as somebody who has lost friends to suicide, even here recently, it gets tough. And working in this field, that's why I have to practice my own self care, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not optional. You know, it's I have to do it. You know, so I make sure that I'm constantly practicing my own self care through music, hanging out with family, working out is one of my biggest coping skills there, and also just talking to people in the field too who understand it and get it can really be powerful as well. Um,
Okay, Byler, I tell you what, let's leave our listeners with some resource here.
Absolutely.
If someone was interested or felt a need for your help and support, how do
Mm-hmm.
they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're interested in counseling services, you can simply call our number at 918-758-1910. If you or someone you know is thinking of suicide, you can also call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number, which is 1-800-273-8255. Or if you don't feel comfortable talking to somebody over the phone and you want to text about it, you can actually text the word CREEK, that's CREEK, to 741-741, and within a couple minutes you'll be connected with a crisis counselor. That isn't the official Muskogee Nation Creek line. I know there's a little bit of confusion because we use the word creek. We use the word creek so we're able to pull data from anyone who used that word. Um, we don't know who the people are, but we can kind of see, was there an increase in text of people who use that word between, let's say, 2020 and 2021, right? Um, so again, that's the crisis text line. You text the word CREEK to 741-741, and within a couple minutes you'll be connected with a crisis counselor to help you out.
All right. Well, thank you so much,
Yeah, thanks
Byler
again.
Stone. We appreciate you taking time and filling in for your bosses. You can tell them you did a good job for me
Yeah,
today.
my pleasure. Thanks again for having me. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
We'll take a short pause here and then we'll be back with part two of our program here today. We're going to talk about Rock the Vote. It's getting that time again, and let's be ready to deal with it. So stay with us here on Muskogee Radio here on 1240 The Brew, 106.3 The Brew. Thank you. Welcome back to Mvskoke Radio here on the Brew. We are talking now with Lillian Thomas, who's been with us before. We'll try and get her to loosen up for me here today. And talk about Rock the Native Vote in particular. Rock the Vote is, I understand, a national effort. Is that right?
Yes. Rock the Native Vote, a nonpartisan and nonprofit organization, is hosting a series of events June 2nd, 2022, across Oklahoma to encourage voter registration and engagement in commemoration of the Indian Citizenship Act. The act passed June 2nd, 1924, extended dual citizenship to Native Americans, allowing them to vote in both non-tribal U.S. and tribal elections. The 1924 Act was a culmination of the allotment era, when every Indian who got an allotment also got citizenship, whether they knew it or not, said Dr. Blue Clark, Mvskoke, author and expert in Indian tribal law. Clark said Indians had served bravely in World War I as code talkers, soldiers, and nurses, and citizenship was viewed as a reward for that military service. Voter registration sites will be set up in 7 communities across Oklahoma and will feature food, entertainment, and speakers. The sites represent several tribal nations and are in areas with large Native populations. The sites include Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Okmulgee, Anadarko, Seminole, Tahlequah, and Ponca City. It is sometimes difficult to comprehend that the indigenous persons were among the last to be given citizenship in this country, said the Reverend David Wilson, director of Rock the Native Vote and assist to the bishop of the Oklahoma Indian Missionary Conference. We need to be mindful of the tenacity of our ancestors who fought for our inherent rights, he said. Wilson says Oklahoma is the second in the nation with the highest populations of voting age Native peoples behind Alaska. Rock the Native Vote is partnering with other organizations that are promoting voter engagement, including Vote Your Values, Cherokee Vote, and AARP Oklahoma. The Oklahoma elections will take place November the 8th, 2022, with both the U.S. Senate and members of the House of Representatives up for re-election. Oklahomans will also vote on the next governor. And to see a full list of the Rock the Native Vote scheduled events, you can go to the website www.rockthenativevote.com.
Well, that's quite a challenge there you have in getting our folks to participate, particularly in the governor's race when it's got to be said that right now Governor Stitt is not particularly let's say, friendly toward Native issues and tribal governments. Now, Rock the Vote, that's a national effort, is that right?
Yes, yes. Our mission in Rock the Native Vote is to register all Native Americans who are old enough to vote and to inform our citizens of the need to have people in our government that will promote Native American interests.
The elections each year here in Muskogee Nation have always, I think, disappointed many people in that we have so many citizens, but a small turnout when it comes to the electorate and voting and the numbers of folks that take part in selecting the leadership and the directions for our tribes. Now, has Your group, now I understand there are several Muskogee people who are involved in this particular effort. Do you have an idea of, on how to stimulate more people into participating and exercising their vote?
Well, I think it's important that we inform our citizens that it's important for us to band together to vote, even though they may think voting in like state elections does not affect them, but it does. So we need to get the proper legislators in there, because sometimes we get people in there that pass laws that are detrimental to the Native Americans. And it's important that we band together to get the right people in the office. And I realize that a lot of people don't even vote in the tribal elections, like you said. So we've been going to, we're going to start going to community meetings and talking to them about the importance of voting. A lot of people may be already registered, but they need to vote. So we're trying to encourage people that this is a year that we need to really band together and get our native vote out there.
Right. So many huge questions are now before our governments about our futures now. Let me ask you something personal, and I understand I won't get too nosy here. Why is it so important, do you think, for yourself to vote, to go in and register the way you feel and make that part of what's happening? Why is it important to you?
Well, I get emotional when I think about this, but I think about the hardships that our ancestors endured when they were forced from their beloved homelands in Georgia and Alabama. And to me, they were herded like cattle to Indian territory just to get rid of them because their lands were wanted. And so they shoved our ancestors off to Indian territory, which was to be the home of the Creeks. Well, I feel like they suffered immensely, but they survived. We were strong. Our ancestors were strong. And I just feel like we need to fight to retain our sovereignty and protect our rights. That's the least we can do to preserve what they left us.
And what the Supreme Court just reaffirmed in the recent McGirt decision said, hey, these reservations didn't go anywhere. This jurisdiction still exists. These people still have the right to determine their own future on their own lands. And the city of Tulsa doesn't like it. Well, that's too bad. If the governor doesn't like it, well, he'll have to deal with it. And it's important, I think, for our populations then to realize that, you've got to do this. You got to, I guess the phrase that comes to my mind is you got to stand up and be counted.
That's right.
Anyway, that's before I start preaching here. Now, has there been some reaction here? Do you have any ideas on maybe the effectiveness of your effort yet? Have you had, people, the numbers increase or anything like that you can point to?
Well, yes, we have attended several events, and surprisingly, we do encounter people that have never registered to vote. And so we have been registering people, and also, not only that, we've been encouraging them to be sure and vote this year. And I wish we could get information about the candidates out to the people, which I think we will probably do later, about, what their interests are, and if it's to our advantage or in our best interest to vote for them. I think our people need to be educated as to what the candidates are, um, what their platform is.
Right, that's tribal and non-tribal.
Right.
Right. Now, of course, Muskogee News and this program and our live video efforts will all be focusing on the elections for our tribe and putting those forums out there for people to hear, to understand, make these candidates tell us out in the open, what they stand for or this sort of thing. So we'll hope that people will tune into those and take advantage of them. As the Rock the Vote campaign rolls along and we get closer to the election, we have more intense efforts. One thing I wanted to say, didn't you all have tables like at the Wild Onion dinners and things?
Yes, we've been to some Wild Onion dinners, and we had some good turnout of people that registered to vote, and they seem to reflect our thoughts on what needs to be done about getting the proper people in office. So I thought that was good,
Right.
because we were thinking the same, focusing on the same interest of getting the right people in office.
Now, this is always a touchy question, but you're not mentioning any candidate names here. Try to remain neutral and let people make up their own minds, but get in there and make up your own mind, please. Now, it's good to hear that you had such a nice reaction there at those dinners, and get people's minds off of the Tufumbachi to talk about voting. So, fry bread's a tough competitor.
That's right.
Now, will we be seeing more of these efforts as we go along?
Yes, like I said, we're going to be attending the community meetings this month, and I realize June 3rd is the deadline for voting in the primary.
And that's just a couple of days away.
Yes, and tomorrow, on June 2nd, we're going to be setting up at the Omniplex, and we'll have some speakers starting at 11 o'clock. We will have David Wilson and Chief David Hill, Second Chief Del Beaver, and Speaker Will Lowe. And beginning at 12, we will have Dr. Randall of the Mvskoke Creek Nation College, Grover Wynn, Director of the Creek Nation VA office, and others like the Creek Nation Princesses and the Youth Council. So our event is going to start at 11 o'clock until 2. We will be serving hot dogs, chips, and drinks. So we're inviting everybody to come to this event, and it's commemorating this act that entitled Native Americans to Vote. And we will be set up to assist anybody who is not registered to vote. We will fill out their registration application.
A couple of questions real quick about that sort of thing. First of all, no Tufumbachi with this one, right?
No,
Darn
I'm
it.
sorry. Just hot dogs.
Well, we can deal with that. Now, as people begin to respond and things, what sort of qualifications do they need to show or to have to register to vote?
All they have to have is their driver's license or show the last 4 numbers of their Social Security number.
That's easy enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, just come in and do it now. The opportunity then to vote will be coming up before too long, and of course we'll have the election board come in and give us the specifics. But as the Rock the Vote, Native Vote intensifies its efforts, what kind of presence will we see then around the nation? You're going to be able to get to all 11 districts, do you think?
Well, I hope so. By going to these community meetings.
Okay, yeah, there we are.
And other events. The Oklahoma City area, they have people going out. So it's just statewide.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping we will get to all the natives.
Okay, and usually someone from their own district will be there to do that, so they can make that connection. Now, what I think for your overall ambition, and what would be, how would you measure success if you figure out that everything you put into this, it worked, and you achieved some success? What signs would you be looking for, I guess?
When I see the right people in, like, the state offices, and when I see that they're going to help promote our sovereignty and our rights, that would make me very happy.
Oh, yeah. Imagine you have
that will legislators that are willing to work with our tribal leaders and not against them.
That never made any sense to me. I mean, for the governor to pull some of the stunts he's done and say, wait a minute here now, you got tribal governments that are contributing significantly to the state budget. There are so many Oklahomans who have Indian blood, and whether they're a member of a tribe or not, they've got, they share that. And why would he want to stir things up? And anyway, that's just me being a journalist and a cynic, I think, at the same time. As we go along here, what kinds of things will you be emphasizing in your campaign? Are there specific points, things that are most important to you that people understand? I know you probably hit on it before, but it's worth re-mentioning, I think.
Well, to me, like you said, this is a reservation, and it's not state-owned, and I would like to get people in the higher offices, like the legislators, to work with us.
What about in terms of the tribe? I know we've got some differences there. These representatives, the council members, supposed to deal with our future specifically. Is there something there that you want to see without getting too political here, I guess?
Well, you can't make everybody happy. I would just like to see our people in our tribal government just work together for the betterment of the people and not bring up personal type conflicts or whatever.
Well, I think that's always been a challenge for tribes across the nation, is that we're not Tulsa. We're not all spread out and disassociated. We're a tribal community, and we're kind of related to each other, and we're a lot tighter with those relationships. And sometimes that gets reflected in elections. Like, oh, well, that was my uncle or my cousin, so I got to go vote for him. And that will happen even in the face of these huge, massive issues that we have to deal with, and the competency of someone who is in a position to direct our tribe. Now, we've unfortunately, we've seen some tribal leaders who weren't concerned with, the greater question, and played these little personal things, games and schemes, a nice way to say it. So we've got to get past that, I think. I don't know. That's just me rambling here now. Do you have any thoughts on those kind of things?
I agree with what you said. I know that when you get elected to an office, like I said, you can't please everyone.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I've got kinfolk who say they would vote for a certain person because they spoke Muskogee. And for me, that just say, well, I respect that and applaud them for that, but that could mean that they can just lie to you in your own language.
yeah.
And we've seen that sort of thing. Anyway, enough of that silliness. Now, we've only got a few minutes left now. Is there any thing we haven't touched on, something important here on your list or your agenda that we should be sharing, or maybe going back and underlining again?
Okay. One thing, part of our mission is, as in Rock the Native Vote, is to reach our youth who are not registered. So we're encouraging people to come to our event tomorrow. The first 100 people that come will get a T-shirt, and we will also have a few raffle prizes. One will be a print from Dana Tiger. So we're encouraging you to come out and visit and enjoy the day with us to commemorate this special event.
No. Okay. Now, I know we've hit on this before, but let's run over the logistics here: where, when, and what time, this sort of thing.
Okay. It's going to be at the Omniplex starting at 11 o'clock until 2. And like I said, we'll be serving hot dogs and have raffle prizes, and you'll get to listen to some speakers. And so we're looking forward to this.
Now, it would seem like that would be an opportunity then to talk to these candidates and ask them questions, either in the big forum or off on the side, to take advantage and get to know them personally, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're not allowed to have any campaigning on tribal property, so there will not be any candidates speaking.
Right, okay. Well, I imagine they're going to be around somewhere, so if you can buttonhole one of them and talk
Yeah, privately you can, but they will not be allowed to do any campaigning. All they can do is promote Rock the Native Vote and encourage people to vote.
That's a wonderful change of pace. And then candidates who can't say anything. Hey, knock it off, shut up.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Lillian, thank you so much for filling in for me today. I know you were kind of drafted into this, but I think you did a wonderful job in sharing this information.
Well, I would just like to thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Okay, well, we will be watching this closely, so if you got anything, let us know, and we'll try and share it.
Well, thank you.
Go. All right, Lillian Thomas with Rock the Vote. Now, we've got a few minutes here, so I think we'll just wrap it up here with a little bit of music from our wonderful jazz singer, Carmen Bruner. A nice way to end the show here. So I want to say thank you for being with us here today on Mvskoke Radio. We'll be back next week with more of this kind of information to share, and we'll talk to you again.
Flow when flesh and steel are one, drying in the color of the evening sun. Tomorrow's rain will wash the stains away, but something in our minds will always stay. Perhaps this final act was meant to clinch a lifetime argument. Nothing comes from violence, and nothing never could. For all those born beneath an angry star, let's lest we forget how fragile we are. On and on the rain will fall like tears from a star, like tears from a star. On and on the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are. If blood will flow when flesh and steel are one, drying in the colors of the evening sun, tomorrow's rain will wash the stains away, but something in our minds will always stay. Perhaps this final act was meant to clinch a lifetime's argument, but nothing comes from violence, and nothing ever could. For all those born beneath an angry star, lest we forget how fragile we are. On and on the rain will fall like tears from a star, like tears from a star. On and on the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are, fragile, fragile we are.
You've been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. But